In the quiet rolling hills of Arkansas, there stood a house unlike any other. It was an old Victorian mansion, towering and weathered, its pointed gables stretching towards the sky. The house had been a fixture of the community for over a century, though very few dared to go inside. Its faded grey interior was covered in ivy, and its tall windows framed by ornate woodwork seemed to peer out of the world like watchful eyes. The house belonged to Margaret, a woman well in her 70s. She lived alone and rarely entertained any visitors. Locals in the nearby town often speculated about her house. Some called it charming and a piece of history, others said it was cursed. Margaret, for her part, ignored all the rumors. When Margaret asked her niece Emily to house sit, it seemed like simple enough for her. Emily was in her late 20s, living in Little Rock and working a demanding office job that left her burned out when she got home. She saw the trip as an opportunity to escape the grind and spend some time in the countryside and maybe even enjoy the novelty of staying in a historic home. Emily arrived on a sunny afternoon. The gravel driveway crunched under her tires as she parked in front of the house. Margaret was waiting on the porch, her suitcase at her feet. The older woman greeted Emily warmly but seemed in a hurry, as if she was waiting to leave. Inside, Margaret gave Emily a quick tour, and the house was even larger than Emily had imagined. There was room after room of antique furniture, faded rugs, and paintings of landscapes that looked as though they belonged in a museum. The house felt alive, with faint ticks of clocks echoing from every corner and the occasional creak of the floorboard underfoot. Margaret showed her where to find the keys, how to work the Aniston stove in the kitchen, and where Mr. Whisker's foot was kept. The cat, a sleek Siamese with striking blue eyes, had already taken a liking to Emily and was waving around her feet. And one thing, Margaret said, her tone shifting. She led Emily to the base of a narrow staircase tucked away in the end of the hall. It led to a single door at the top, plain and unassuming. "Don't go into the attic," Margaret said. Her voice was low, almost trembling. Emily raised an eyebrow and said, "Why not?" It's just better if you don't go," Margaret replied, her gaze fixed on the door. "There's nothing up there you need to see. Promise me you will stay out of it." Emily hesitated but eventually nodded. "Okay, I promise." Satisfied, Margaret left and Emily settled in for what she thought would be a quiet week. The first 2 days passed uneventfully. Emily explored the house a little bit, marveling at the sheer number of rooms and the treasures they held. There were shelves lined with leather-bound books, porcelain dolls with unsettlingly lifelike eyes, and cabinets filled with delicate china. But as the sun set each evening, the house changed. The warm lights of the day gave way to long shadows that crept along the walls, and the quiet became oppressive. The tickling of the clocks, which had seemed quiet during the day, now felt like endless maddening rhythm. Emily couldn't ignore the attic stairs either. Every time she passed them, she felt a strange pull. She told herself it was just her imagination driving her crazy, but there was something about the door that seemed to demand her attention. By the third night, curiosity had taken root. Emily tried to ignore it, focusing on a book she found in the library, but the attic was always there, nagging at the edge of her thought. Finally, unable to resist, she decided to take a leap and go there to look. The house was silent as she approached the stairs. The hallway was dimly lit, the antique lamps casting a faint golden glow, and Mr. Whisker sat at the base of the staircase, staying up the attic door. He let out a loud rumbling growl as Emily passed him, something she'd never heard him do before. At the top of the stairs, Emily hesitated. The door was ordinary, just some old wood and a brass knob in the middle of it, but the air around it felt somehow colder. She placed her hand on the knob and shivers ran through her. It felt unnaturally cold. It's like being outside on a winter's night. She turned the knob slowly, the door cracked open, the air that rushed out was icy and stale, carrying a faint metallic tang. Inside the attic, it was pitch black. She fumbled for a light switch just inside the door, but she found nothing. Pulling out her phone, Emily switched on the flashlight. The beam cut through the darkness, revealing wooden beams, dusty furniture, and stacks of old card boxes. The attic was just as she would imagine. Ordinary, cluttered, and kind of unremarkable. But then she heard it, a whisper. It was faint, barely audible. "Go back." Emily froze. The voice was soft, almost gentle, but it sent a chill down her spine. She swung her flashlight around, scanning the room, but there was nothing but shadows and dust. The whispers came again, louder this time. "Go back." Her heart pounded as she stepped backwards, her flashlight trembling in her hand. She tried to rationalize it. Maybe it was just the wind or the old house settling, but deep down, she knew it wasn't. Suddenly, the flashlight flickered, the beam diming, and in a split second before it went out completely, she saw something. A figure, just a shadow, but it moved. Panic surged her and she turned and ran. Stumbling down the stairs, she slammed the door shut and locked it, her hand shaking as she fumbled for the key. That night, Emily didn't sleep. She sat in the brightly lit room, clutching a blanket and listening to every creak and groan the house made. Mr. Whiskers stayed close, his ears flat and his eyes fixed on the darkened hallway. When Margaret returned, Emily was already packed and waited by the door. She handed over the keys and gave a polite smile, but said nothing about what happened. Margaret didn't ask either. She simply nodded and watched as Emily drove away. The attic door remained locked, and whatever had been up there, Margaret had known all along. And though Emily never spoke of it again, the house in Arkansas continued to stand, its secrets kept safe beneath the shadows of its gabled roof. If you like the story, make sure to subscribe to the channel, give it a thumbs up so we can continue to make more videos like this. I'm trying to get the production quality as good as possible. We just changed the whole setup here, right? We got a different microphone, got a great softbox, got a nice backdrop over here, and I'm planning to invest in some really nice props that we can basically create a whole movie set out of that we will use as a backdrop. So if you enjoyed the story, make sure to subscribe to the channel. Many more will come. Give it a thumbs up and enjoy the ride, baby. Ciao.